Hey, Greg.
Hey.
Nice to see you. Welcome.
What a place.
Over to you,
Nice
Greg.
to see you, Katie.
See you.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I think in the energy industry, they often start with a safety message about what happens if there's a fire. To be honest, I think we're pretty safe. I mean, this place, remarkable, isn't it? I've also got to say, my own safety warning. Last time I was in Berlin, the night before an event, a whole load of Germans forced me to drink German beer and then took me to a brightly lit room with a spinning stage. I haven't learned my lesson. German beer is possibly the most toxic substance known to humans. And surrounded by these multicolored lights, I've got to say, this is not the best start to the day. So thank you all for braving. I'm sure you've done the same. Thank you all for braving it. And I'm absolutely over the moon. I can't tell you how excited I am to welcome our first absolutely inspirational, remarkable guest of the day, who's braved far worse. Bertrand Piccard, please. For those who don't know, Bertrand has circumnavigated the world multiple times, but done it in ways that are rather more, I was about to say that they're rather more challenging than doing it on British Airways, but the reality is if you've flown British Airways lately, it's probably not that much more challenging. But I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a British entrepreneur. And so for me, one of the role models of my life has been Richard Branson. Richard Branson took on an enormous number of challenges. Obviously, building a better airline than British Airways was one of them. But actually, he repeatedly took on adventurous challenges. And one of them was trying to go around the world in a hot air balloon. He failed.
Yes.
And you didn't.
Yes.
But you did twice. And then you succeeded. Tell us about this.
We both failed 3 times. And he failed 3 times, I failed twice and succeeded the 3rd time.
Tell us about that.
But you know what was interesting? Was the fact that it was completely new. Nobody had any benchmark, and it was considered to be impossible. So we were trying, failing, and the only question was, what should we change between 2 attempts? And Richard changed nothing. He kept the same strategy, the same technology, and failed each time for the same reason. And if I succeeded, it's only because I changed everything each time. Learning from the failures and changing the crew, the type of fuel, the balloon, the strategy, the track, everything. And finally, success comes when you try one more time than the number of failures.
Let's take a seat.
An entrepreneur never sits down. You want to sit down?
I mean, mate, let's talk about that German beer again. Right. But it's really interesting that you tried and it didn't work. What went wrong the first time?
Technical problem with fuel. Be careful if you use fuel, because it's wrong to say the sky is the limit. The limit is fuel. And we had a major leak in the capsule, and I had to ditch in an emergency in the Mediterranean Sea.
Wow, okay, and then
the second time, there was no permission to fly above China, and the winds did not know it, so we couldn't avoid China, and I landed in Myanmar. And the 3rd time was successful, and the 3rd time was a beautiful flight. It was 45,000 kilometers, it was 20 days non-stop in the air. Fantastic.
So you got on a hot air balloon, and you spent 20 days in the air.
20 days in the balloon.
Yeah, and I mean, how unpleasant is that? I mean,
well, you live in the sky. You eat, you sleep, you go to the bathroom, you fly the balloon. It's your house for 20 days.
It's incredible.
And it's almost difficult to get out of it at the end, because you lose the sense of time. You're just in the sky, and suddenly, well, it's the end of the flight. Everybody thinks that it's long, that it's difficult. No, it's short, it's beautiful, it's it's a moment of awareness that you keep during the 20 days. You know, you are in the present moment all the time, so you are much more efficient, much more performant. Well, it's between an adventure and a spiritual experience.
Is it dangerous?
No, the most dangerous thing in life is not to fly a balloon or a solar airplane around the world. The most dangerous thing in life is to keep on burning 1 million tons of oil every hour, changing the climate, destroying biodiversity. This is dangerous. This really makes me afraid. But flying in something that goes with nature, no problem.
And I think we'll come back to that in a second. But first of all, I don't know whether you know this, but we've got a photograph. Is there a... Can we stick a big picture up on the screen? Not that one, though. There's another one with an old bloke. Anyone got that?
This one you wanted?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, what's going on here?
You know, the story started much before the flight to the balloon or the solar airplane. The story started with my grandfather, who made the first flight in the stratosphere and invented the pressurized cabin. And he inspired Hergé to draw the Professor Calculus in Tintin.
So basically, though, that bloke is the Tintin fella.
Yeah.
And that one's your granddad.
And that's my grandfather. And you know what's interesting with my grandfather is that in 1931, when he made his first flight to the stratosphere, it was the time where airplanes were flying in bad weather, at low level, unpressurized, using a lot of fuel and had no reliability. And when my grandfather invented the stratospheric pressure capsule, he could prove that it was possible to fly in high altitudes, in thinner air, with less fuel consumption, and that opened the way to two things, to modern aviation and to fuel efficiency. So he already had this idea of protecting the environment by being more efficient. That means by achieving more with less consumption.
And I think this thing about efficiency is so critical. For those who don't know, an electric car powered entirely by electricity from a gas power station has lower emissions than a petrol car. Very often, creating a world where we do less damage to the environment isn't just about changing the source of fuel, it's about rethinking everything. Now, so in that case, he recognized that it's counterintuitive that to go higher actually uses less fuel.
Exactly,
than going
because
lower.
you have less resistance.
Yeah.
And efficiency is something that a lot of people don't understand. That's why I would like to show you this slide. Does it work? You put my first slide, please. Now, this one, about solar impulse. Because after the flight with the balloon, I went around the world in a solar airplane.
So hang on, so
And
for
it
those
was
who don't know,
interesting to see.
you went around the world in a solar-powered airplane.
Yes.
All the way around the world.
Yes, that was not non-stop. There were several stopovers. But what was really interesting when we speak about energy, because that's the topic of the day, it's not just aviation, it's energy, I believe, especially with you, Greg. When I came to the airplane constructors and asked if they could build me a solar-powered airplane that could fly around the world, they told me it's completely impossible, this project is ridiculous, and it takes 1 minute to calculate that the sun is not giving enough energy to power an airplane day and night. And this is the paradigm of today. Still, it's about energy production. You always need to produce more. And if you cannot produce more, then it's impossible and you cannot do it. And when you have a war in Ukraine and you have a lack of Russian gas, everybody's panicking and desperately trying to find another supplier, instead of thinking, how can we be more efficient? How can we save energy? And I think it's really important to know, you obviously know it, but the world is wasting 3/4 of the energy that is produced. 3/4, just because of erratic behaviors or outdated infrastructures and systems. So the question is not to produce more, the question is to consume less. And it took maybe a minute to calculate that the sun was not giving enough energy for a solar-powered airplane. And then it took 3 years to make the plane energy efficient to cope with the energy the sun was giving. So that was longer, of course, but this is why we had this huge wingspan, bigger than a jumbo jet. The weight was lighter than a family car, and the power was the power of a scooter. And with the power of the scooter, we were consuming very little energy. The sun was enough, and we could fly that plane around the world. So it's all a question of being efficient. And there was such an interesting experience with this airplane. When I was flying with no fuel, no pollution, no noise, I could stay in the air day and night. And in the beginning, I thought, I'm in the future. That's science fiction. And the biggest experience with Solar Impulse was to understand that I was not in the future. I was in the present with the technologies of today, allowing me to fly today on solar power. That means that if I was not in the future, but only in the present, what does it mean? It means that the rest of the world was in the past. And that was a revelation for me. Suddenly I thought, the world in which we find it normal to live is the world of the past, and we don't notice it. It's like the fish in the water who doesn't know he's wet. We're in the world of the past with thermal engines that have 20% of outcome, of yield, when my electric engines have 97%. We live in the world that is wasting energy in buildings, in heating systems, cooling systems, lighting systems, industrial processes, dirty sources of fuel. That's a shame. And this is why it was horrible to land with this plane. Taking off was fantastic, but landing, can you imagine? You come back into the past, and everything is dirty, smells, is inefficient, is polluted, because you still have oil. So this was really the most interesting experience with this airplane. This travel in time and showing that if we want to decarbonize our world, it's mainly a question of making our world more modern, using new technologies, using new sources of energy, being energy efficient. And, well, I think this is the new adventure of the 21st century.
The room went silent when you were talking about that. There's a bunch of people here who drove here in electric cars. And I remember when I first got an electric car. And that moment when you realize that it's silent.
Yeah.
And that silence kind of brings to life the fact that it's doing so much less harm than burning stuff. And of course, what you've just described is that world in which ordinarily aviation is this highly polluting activity, and you were able to do it with none of that. What was the sort of hardest part of being able to get your plane built? Like, I've heard when you spoke to aviation experts, what happened?
I was lucky not to be an aviation expert because I would have known it was impossible. And that's what all the aviation experts told me. They were laughing at it. So who made the plane? A shipyard.
A shipyard?
A shipyard who knew how to use carbon fiber to be extremely light, to deal with big wingspans. And afterward, the aviation industry was really ashamed because the shipyard made the first solar airplane that flew around the world.
But that's incredible, right? Because you did the maths, you worked out it was possible, and the aviation people said, this is not possible.
Yeah? But it's always like this for pioneers. First, you do what people believe is impossible. You might fail, so people laugh at you, and when you succeed, they look at it and they say, oh, it's possible? Maybe it's easy, and it becomes normal. And they forget how difficult it was in the beginning. And now, aviation has launched 600 electric airplane programs since we flew around the world with Solar Impulse. So it really shows that you need to take the risk to open a new field, and pioneering spirit, innovation. It's not about inventing something new. It's about getting rid of the old belief that keep you prisoners of the past. And when you allow yourself to throw out as ballast all these old beliefs, all these old convictions, these old paradigms and dogmas, then you have the mind and the heart empty enough to welcome something new. Otherwise, nothing new can come.
You know, I think it was Bill Gates that said, we're living in the future. Like you, he recognized that people always go, in the future, ... And yet that's what we have today.
Yeah.
And I think in energy, time and again, the existing energy industry will talk about the challenges of renewables. They'll say it's not always windy, it's not always sunny, because they're used to a world where they provide us with a sort of rectangle of power. Not in the future, but today.
Yeah, exactly.
We have this remarkable world where, when it is windy and sunny, we have totally independent, completely carbon-free, unbelievably cheap energy. And we just have to change the mindset, the paradigm that says, if we use more of it at those times, then we open the world that you've already experienced, where things that today destroy our planet do no harm at all, and they cost nothing. Can you tell us a little bit about like how, I know for you, like where you're taking your energy mission today?
Yes. After flying around the world with Solar Impulse, I launched with my foundation a challenge of identifying more than 1,000 solutions that are economically profitable to protect the environment. Protect the environment, everybody agrees. Now, why economically profitable? And you know, it's really important to understand that the language of the world is not the beauty of nature. The language of the world is economical profit, it's job creation, it's everything that allows you to be successful in life. For politicians, it's job creation. For a CEO, it has to be profitable for his company and give the dividends to the shareholders. And if it doesn't work like this, they keep on doing dirty things. So we looked only for solutions that would be economically profitable. And in the beginning, I was hearing, it's not possible. Ecology is expensive and sacrificial. Industry is profitable but dirty. You cannot bring the two together. And I had to face all this skepticism again. And this was good because it brought really good people in the team, identifying these solutions, going in the startups, going in the incubators, accelerators, investment funds. And finally, we found 1,000 of these solutions. And now we are at 1,780. And they are processes, systems, products, materials, softwares, sources of energy, devices. And they are available today. They exist today, and they are not used. This is the most crazy thing. You have, like, you know, fresh water around you, and you die of thirst because you don't see this fresh water around you. And now we are dying in pollution because we don't see all the solutions that we have around us. So our task is to bring these solutions to governments, to corporations, to institutions, and say, you can reach your ambitious energy targets just by replacing what is polluting by what protects the environment. And this allows to change the way the economy works. So instead of having quantitative economy, you know, where you sell quantity at cheap price, low salaries, social inequalities, waste and pollution, you go to a qualitative economy. The qualitative economy, you sell efficiency, you sell clean energy, you sell quality. And this is a completely new way to see the introduction of these clean technologies in our world. And we just need to show well enough that it is the best business opportunity for the world. Not only that it protects the environment.
But so you set out to find 1,000 profitable approaches to improving the world, and you found 12,780. I always think like it's really hard to ask a parent who their favorite child is. Of those 12,708, what are the things that you're most passionate about? What are these specific solutions that today you would like to share with us? And
You have the solutions of common sense. It means instead of putting air conditioning in a data center to cool it down, like it is done today, you take the heat from the data center to heat up a city. You can do it also with the heat from the chimney of a factory, the heat from the water of the shower going to the drain, with the heat in the underground parkings. All this you can use, and today we waste it. So it's a question of stopping to waste in order to reuse. But there are also systems for construction that I love. Instead of putting big iron bars in the concrete, there's a company in Belgium, Piccard, who is putting a mix of steel staples inside the concrete. It is mixed in the concrete. You don't need the iron bars anymore, and you can take less steel, less concrete, because it is more compact, and it is cheaper and more ecological. But you know, people don't know they can build a building like this. We have to know about it. You have solutions also to save energy in the storage of data. You have ways to use unrecyclable waste to make gravel or construction material. You have the way to detect the leaks in the pipes to save water. You know, about 50% of drinking water is lost because you have holes everywhere in the pipes.
I think
so all this, and I can continue for hours.
By the way, we probably will. But that point about water, right? Every drop of water has gone through the complex, expensive, energy-intensive process of being cleaned.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And half it you then throw away without using any of it.
Yeah.
And what about aviation? 3% of global emissions are aviation. I think for me and for many people in the room, it's the thing I feel most guilty about because I have to fly a lot and I can't do anything about cleaning it up. What are you doing there?
I'm going to show you something new, and I'm going also to reframe a little bit what you said. There is a way to say aviation is 3% of CO2 emissions. Okay. There is another way to say that aviation represents the half of the emissions due to food waste. That aviation is 2.5 times less than the emissions of the textile industry. That it is 10 times less than terrestrial mobility. So you have to put it in context. So scapegoat is not a good way to think. But you need to show that, nevertheless, you can do better with aviation. Because aviation, 3%, okay, it's not a lot, but it's too much. So I've launched a new project now that I would like to show you on the screen, which is a green hydrogen-powered airplane to fly non-stop around the world with 0 emissions. With a balloon, it was non-stop, but I had emissions. On Solar Impulse, it was 0 emission, but we had 16 stopovers. So now it's time to make the ultimate flight and show that with liquid hydrogen, if it's made in a green way with renewables, and that's the link also between us, I hope you'll provide renewable energies for my green hydrogen.
We'll do the deal now.
Exactly. And this plane should be able to do it non-stop. So it's under construction. So I cannot show you anything else now than a shadow of the plane flying above the world. But nevertheless, there is a construction. We have one of the fuselage ready. The molds of the wings arrived. We have big partners like Science Corps, like OCP, Breitling, the University Mohammed VI Polytechnic, who is working with us on that project. And the goal is to make something that is, again, considered to be impossible. You have a lot of people who say you can never have enough hydrogen. Hydrogen is too expensive. You cannot make it in a green way. You don't have enough electrolyzers. Well, it's interesting to see that it's absolutely true that today you have not enough offer, not enough demand, which means that you have no hydrogen industry. And you need to understand that we're exactly like at the beginning of the mobile phone industry. You had a suitcase of $15,000 to make a mobile phone. There were not enough antennas, and people thought it will remain a niche, it will never be globalized. And it's not true. Now we have mobile phones in every pocket, and you have antennas everywhere. It's exactly what needs to happen with hydrogen, like it happened also for solar energy. When I initiated Solar Impulse, the photovoltaic was 40 times more expensive than it is today. But what happened? Photovoltaic reached the critical mass. When you reach the critical mass, the price drops, and then you have more demand, more offer, and you have a complete industry. And with hydrogen, it's the same, or it should be the same. We want to make this ultimate flight, show that you can achieve the impossible with hydrogen, and make hydrogen industry desirable. You know, this is what fails in our world, to make ecology, hydrogen, renewable energies, energy efficiency much more desirable.
And so your hydrogen plane, will that be hydrogen fuel cell and then electric engines? And
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
And you'll be able to take off. It will take off
Yes.
under its own power.
You take off on your own, you fly for 9 days, and the challenge is to keep the hydrogen liquid for 9 days.
Okay, because it really wants to turn
But
back
the
into a
little
gas.
part of it which always evaporates, which you call the boil-off, goes through a fuel cell to make electricity for the electric motors. And for the one who think, yeah, but that's just an experimental thing that has no possibilities for the future, you have to understand that we have the same wingspan with this plane than an Airbus 320. So not too much, 34 meters. And with the amount of hydrogen we will take to fly 2 people for 9 days, you can put in a normal Airbus 320 to fly 150 people for several hours. So the order of magnitude
Hang on, who's going to go with
works
you?
completely.
You said 2 people. Who's going with you?
Raphaël Dinelli, who is a French navigator, who is a
shit.
composite.
I thought I was in there,
You
mate.
wanted to fly
I
with me?
literally, I was about to sponsor it. We're about to do an amazing deal.
Okay, but you have to build it then, because Raphaël Dinelli is building the plane. He's a composite engineer, and with his team and his company, 49 South in Western France, he's building the plane.
Yeah.
But you can nevertheless sponsor it.
Is that, well, hang on. This has just gone very badly wrong. Speaking of which, look, you're a remarkable innovator, an explorer and adventurer, but you're also a psychiatrist and a hypnotist.
Yes.
I've just felt the power of that. Tell us a little bit about...
You know what is interesting, being a psychiatrist, is that you see how much people are afraid of the unknown. And I think the biggest suffering that human beings have is about refusing to change because they're afraid of the unknown. And all the psychotherapy can be summarized in explaining that the therapist is helping the patient to have confidence in change, a desire to change, because the change will appear as better than what we have now. And this is exactly what we have to do for sustainability, for climate action. Just bring this enthusiasm around changing and change the narrative. If you look at what happens still today, the narrative is horrible. We have to make sacrifice. We have to pay money. We have to reduce mobility, comfort, and economic development. We have to decarbonize. Who wants to do that? Nobody. Or 5% of the population who are courageous enough to make this sacrifice. But 95% of the population, the politics and the economy doesn't want that. So you need to put a narrative where you modernize, which means that decarbonization will become the logical consequence of modernization. It's not a cost, but an investment that is profitable. It is not for the future generations, it's already for the benefit of our current generation. It's an opportunity, it's exciting, it brings people together. Well, all this is a new narrative that has to reconcile ecology and economy and show to the ecologists that they have to work with the industry and show to the industry that they have to work with the ecologist. And if you manage to do that, we have far more power, because the energy today is lost by fighting between the Greens and the industry, instead of looking, what are the solutions for the industry that can work for the goals of the Greens?
Yeah, it's incredible. You just remind me that I saw this incredible documentary where climate protesters went to a town in Australia where they mined coal for making power. And there'd been violence between the two groups. And the journalist said to the people from the guy who literally hit one of the climate protesters said, do you believe in climate change? And the guy said, no. And the journalist said, if there was a choice between working here in the coal mine and working in the next town in clean energy, which one would you want your kids to do? And he went, obviously the clean energy. And the journalist said, well, so if you could work in clean energy too, which would you do? You go, clean energy. And then the journalist said to him, and back to climate change. Do you think that's the thing? He went, yeah, I think that's the thing. And the interesting bit was to get him to acknowledge the issue, we had to give him a path to be part of the solution. And what you just said there just completely reminds me of the importance of that. By the way, we're nearly out of time, but anything else you'd like to show us maybe or maybe as a video perhaps?
There was a little video that you were supposed to put at the beginning.
I know. But
so
look,
maybe we can put it at the end.
I think as innovators, as people who make it up as we go along, I think
let's show the little video.
Exactly, let's do the little video.
Every dream in history was considered impossible until it had been accomplished. Behind each achievement, explorers have invented the future by going beyond the frontiers of certainties. They have broken the rules, challenging common assumptions to discover new solutions. Today, solving the environmental crisis seems out of reach. We need the same pioneering spirit that has in the past allowed mankind to achieve the impossible. This is how we will find the solutions to change the world. Bertrand Piccard, the visionary behind Solar Impulse, wanted to demonstrate the incredible potential of renewable energies and clean technologies. Solar Impulse was built to carry this message around the world.
Hello, Solar Pulse. Hello, Captain Piccard. I am inspired by your pioneering spirit.
You know, Mr. Secretary General, if an airplane like Solar Impulse can fly day and night without fuel, the world, of course, can be much cleaner.
Hotel India Bravo, turning final, 02 right.
Remarkable. Bertrand?
Greg?
Thank you so much.
With pleasure. We pull at the same rope.
I'll join you on your plane.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.